Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Izul Kamil and I'm from Group 7, and we will now discuss the topic for today's presentation, which is ESP in real world setting. Next, we have the members here. There is Aufa Fadlan, Farid William Syafadil, and me myself, Muhammad Izul Kamil. So, the first topic will be implementing ESP in different settings. There are three general settings for implementing ESP in real life, which is the ideal setting, the opportunistic setting, and the just-in-time setting. An ideal ESP setting is often represented in the literature of ESP, while the other two will be encountered more often by ESP instructor in real-life situations. The first setting, which is the ideal setting, is where a team of course administrator and ESP instructor can work together to recreate the four pillars of ESP and design it neat and clearly. It is the best settings for ESP, but also not so common. Rarely, in fact, do we, as ESP instructors, have the opportunity to build a completely new ESP course from scratch within a team or maybe individually. Right. In this ideal setting, the team would start by building the first pillar of ESP, which is a careful, neat analysis of the different stakeholders, including the learners, the instructors, and the administrators themselves. After the team have found the needs of all of the stakeholders of this course, then they will start beginning to build the second pillar of ESP through the creation of a set learning objectives that address the various target needs. Then they could work to build the third pillar of ESP by designing the materials and in-class methods of teaching and learning that will mesh perfectly with those preferred by the instructors and the target learners. And then finally, they could construct the final, which is the fourth pillar of ESP, through the design and implementation of various evaluation methods, including placement tests, diagnostic assessments, regular in-class quizzes, final tests and reports, and other methods to evaluate what was achieved. In this ideal setting, the design process would have to synchronize with one another because they have lots of times and lots of individuals working together. Next, we will discuss on implementing ESP in an opportunistic setting. So most ESP instructors will find themselves working in a setting where they are assigned to an ESP course that has already been set up by others in the organization and run for several years. So by far, this is the most common settings that an ESP instructor will encounter in their life. So, if you find yourself in this opportunistic setting in the future, then it is essential that you start out by trying to establish what decisions that have already been made and why. So, for example, a textbook has been prescribed for the course, and this implies that one or more administrators have considered the goals of the course and felt that this textbook has matched them. If so, what are those goals and what are the learners' needs on which these goals are based? And you might find the answers by speaking to the administrators directly, or perhaps you can extract the answers to these questions from the teacher's guide or the materials for the first lessons of the course. And then you will also need to establish what kinds of learning objectives that are suggested by the materials and why are those deemed important in the field of ESP. And this might lead you to read up about the target language settings and the discourse community that the learners will enter. Then you can think about what teaching and the learning methods that you can employ in the classroom and what kind of evaluation procedures that you must employ and what flexibility in assessment that you have. And lastly, we will talk about implementing ESP in a just-in-time setting. In some very rare cases, you might find yourself having to prepare for an ESP course with only a few days to get ready. For example, maybe in English for academic purpose settings, another instructor might suddenly be taken ill or quit, and you have to take over. or a scheduled course may suddenly become oversubscribed and require extra sections to be managed. Or maybe in English for occupational purposes settings, an employee may suddenly receive a work assignment that requires a specialized English skill, and you are there to support them in their ESP course. If you find yourself in this situation but you are working within a well-established program, you can usually rely on the institution having a plethora of ready-made materials and administrative support staff to help you prepare for the course. Or maybe in the other hand, if you are alone or in your own, one strategy that you can use and has been used by many instructors in all areas of English language teaching is simply to pick up a textbook and go. But the assumption here that you need to confirm that the author of the textbooks has followed good course design principles and read in the book to match the learner's needs. And you would also really hope that the authors has included a broad range of materials, activities, and assessment procedures that will ensure that learners meet their target learning objectives while keeping them motivated to complete the course. Although this just-in-time setting is a rare case for an ESP instructor to encounter, you have to remember that all classroom settings have a just-in-time element to them. For example, it is impossible for an instructor to be fully prepared to explain all the materials they will cover, and you may need to quickly adapt to what you are doing if the learners suddenly reveal a lack of knowledge in an area you assume they knew, or ask you a challenging question about an aspect of the target discipline that you are unfamiliar with. It is in these situations where a learner-centered or data-driven approach can be particularly effective. And next, we will move on to the next presenter, which is Aufa Fadlan.
Next one is dealing with challenges in ESP. In this chapter, we will look at the more general challenges that ESP instructors face in English for academical purposes or English for occupational purposes settings. Knowing what these challenges are and how to address them will not only help you to become a better ESP instructor, but also give you important insights into the work faced by ESP administrators. The first one is addressing challenges related to a need analysis and the motivations of stakeholders in ESP. The first one is challenges to administrative needs. Administrators of ESP programs are often pressured to make decisions about course and program design based on limited or misinformed needs analysis. In other words, knowing about the field but not knowing the target language, genres, and skill that a course necessitates. So, ESP instructors entering the classroom can quickly find that some administrators' decisions are problematic. Perhaps the learners are not at the level or in the same specialist discipline as suggested by the materials. Perhaps the course is not long enough to reach the intended goals. Therefore, it is essential that you communicate with the administrators to understand how they arrive at their decision and learn which of their decisions are based truly on necessities, and which might be possible to modify or reject entirely. The second one is challenges to learners' needs. One of the great challenges of understanding learner needs in an ESP context is that the learner themselves may not be fully aware of what they need. Ideally, the learner wants will match their necessities and lacks. But when a mismatch occurs, the more you know about the target settings and this course community that learner will enter, the more you will be able to motivate them and convince them that your classes will be valuable to them. However, even if the learner's views are misplaced, it is still essential that you listen to what they are and communicate the views to the administrators. The third one is challenges to instructor needs. ESP instructors often come from very different backgrounds and will have their own necessities, lacks, and wants for an for an ESP course. Some may be experts in a target discipline but lack experience of language teaching, and others may be the exact opposite. Almost every instructor has a different opinion on an approach to materials design, in class teaching, homework assignments, and testing. So, by understanding who you are, what you want and believe, and what you need to know and understand are the keys to being able to seek appropriate advice and support in an SP environment. The next one is addressing challenges related to the specification of learning objectives in ESP. The first one is challenges when the target learning objectives are wrong. ESP instructors sometimes mismatch between the specified goal of the course and the actual needs of the different stakeholders. This situation can occur for various reasons, but perhaps the most common is that the course has been designed by administrators who are not familiar with the target settings. So, first, you need to establish who exactly is mistaken. It may be the case that you think the administrators have created objectives that are wrong, but there's also a good chance that you might be the one mistaken. Perhaps it is you who lacks familiarity or experience with the target setting. In short, you must always consult with administrators before taking action that clearly go against the original design of a course. The second one is challenges when the learning objectives are unspecified. ESP instructors can find themselves in is when an ESP course has few or no learning objectives. One reason why the objectives might not be specified is a pedagogic one. Some administrators are happy to create empty course boxes with generic titles that they expect experienced instructors will fill with their own objectives, materials, methods, and assessment procedures, with, with little or no further specification. A more complex reason for not specifying course objectives is that they are unknown. Perhaps the administrators are not familiar with the target setting and do not have access to specialist informants or experienced ESP experts who can help them decide on the details of the course. However, the setting here still requires that you design your own course. This means that you will first need to determine the needs of the learner on your own. Then you can decide if you are going to adopt a wide or narrow-angled approach. And finally, you can create a set of objectives and design materials, methods, and evaluating procedures. The third one is challenges when the target learning objectives are unknown. Even if the ESP course is built on a clear and detailed set of learning objectives, the instructors can face significant challenges implementing the course as it designed. The course may require facilities, resources, class sizes, and time allowances that the institution, instructors, and learners cannot or will not provide. In short, the courses are unrealistic. Sometimes the course objectives require instructors with a high level of experience, training, and/or understanding of a specialist discipline. This introduces the challenges of hiring the right people. If you find yourself teaching in an ESP setting where the learning objective seems unrealistic, or you lack the knowledge necessary to address them in class, perhaps the key skill you need to develop are negotiation and collaboration. If the course design appears unrealistic, you will need to negotiate with the administrative team to decide what components of the course can be adjusted, simplified, or removed entirely. Also, you can collaborate with the team of other instructors in this program if it exists to address your weaknesses. The next one is addressing challenges related to materials and methods in ESP. The first one is challenges locating suitable materials. ESP instructors have to be able to evaluate, adopt, and adapt readily available materials for the ESP classroom. The challenges that faces many novice ESP instructors is locating potential useful materials and career content before the materials evaluation stage begins. The internet has also dramatically improved the change of finding authentic language samples produced by members of the target discourse community. In EAP settings, conference proceedings and journal articles are available for download through global information analytics business. It is generally much more difficult to find readily available collections of authentic language produced in English for occupational purposes settings. On the other hand, the internet can provide us with instant access to a surprisingly wide array of individual samples of English occupational purposes language. Second one is challenges dealing with specialist vocabulary and subject knowledge. When English language teacher think of taking up a ESP course, the first worry that often comes to mind is what to do about specialist vocabulary and subject knowledge. The abstract source contains a great many technical words with which you are likely to be unfamiliar. You are also unlikely to be able to judge the merits of the research content. What learners most often lack is an ability to recognize how technical vocabulary and content knowledge are used in appropriate ways that follow the general conventions of the field. So, you can help learners to understand the rhetorical structure by dividing up the text and labeling the parts. You can then help them to understand how general and academical language is used to signal that structure and link complex ideas together. As a result, you might choose to explain how to use other logical connectors and provide learners with a list of common academic vocabulary items to study and memorize. The third one is challenges working in a team with subject specialists. One of the great challenges of team teaching with a subject specialist is knowing the role of the other member of the team. There's a danger that the subject specialist will immediately assume the leadership role and start dictating what materials should be used, how they should be taught in class, and how learners should be tested on the course material. This can easily happen when the course is being run in a subject specialist-owned department and the ESP instructor has been hired from outside. So it is important that the whole team has an open and frank discussion about the way the course should be implemented. Also, it is important that you make clear to the rest of the members what contribution you can make and their importance. In simple terms, you must communicate to the others that you are also a specialist in English for specific purposes. You can gain their respect and play an equal role in the team. The fourth one is challenges working in a learner-centered classroom. One of the most challenging aspects of ESP faced by traditional English instructors is adjusting to a learner-centered classroom environment. In traditional general English teaching, the instructor is assumed to be the expert. In ESP teaching, things are not so simple. The instructor might not know at the outset which grammar rules are relevant, what the vocabularies of the field even means, and how people in the discourse community use language to complete their studies or work. So, the obvious solution is to give up on the idea of being an expert in the target discipline and hand at least some of the authority and control in the classroom to the learners. In particular, it is important that you don't create an impression with learners that you are unsure what you are doing. At a practical level, In class, you should resist the temptation to always select course materials to show us examples. Sometimes, let the learner speak the materials. And also, you shouldn't feel that you always need to explain everything. Let the learners offer their own explanations and insight of their own work, and that to of others. The next one is addressing challenges related to learner, instructor, and course or program evaluation. The first one, challenges in the design of authentic evaluation procedures. When it comes to evaluation in ESP, we can consider developing authentic tests and other evaluation procedures. However, this is where the challenge comes. In both English for academic purposes and English for occupational purposes settings, even though you may be working in the same institution, you will not be considered to be a member of the learner's target discourse community. So, any test or evaluation procedure you implement will not necessarily produce a learner performance that matches what they can achieve in an authentic setting. Again, you will see that collaboration is a useful skill to have if you want to introduce authentic evaluation procedures into an ESP classroom. In some cases, you might need the assistance of specialist informants to review your testing materials to determine if the questions are relevant and important. At other times, you might want them to participate directly in the assessment, perhaps serving as a role play for partner for learners or as a direct assessor of their performance. Second one is challenges integrating standardized tests into an ESP course or program. A challenge for ESP course designers creating a completely new course, therefore, is deciding what kind of tests should be used. Perhaps a more common challenge, on the other hand, is what to do as an ESP instructor when one of these tests is already adopted by the institution but it does not match well with the state learning objectives of the course. So the obvious strategy is to carefully review all the available tests, consult with the specialist informants about their relative merits and value, and then consult with the senior administrators in the institution about the logistics and running the terms in terms of cost, time, and space, time management, and so on. You can also try to find an overlap between the content of the standardized test and the knowledge and skill addressed in the ESP course, and then highlight the similarities where possible. Another strategy is to collect quantitative data of learner performance on the standardized test and their performance in the ESP class and show the degree to which the scores are correlated. The last one is contentious issues in ESP, introducing change in ESP course and program design. Change often implies more work for people implementing the change and also more work for those that the change affects. But in reality, we all have experienced change that do the exact opposite and waste time and resources, leave a system in a worse position. At the ground level, we can find the mismatch in the perception of change. An instructor might want to introduce new materials that better match the learner's need. The learners, on the other hand, may be happy to use the current materials because they can purchase second-hand at the local bookstore. So, Nation and McAllister propose implementing a successful change policy in 5 steps. The first one is to make sure that the change is really needed. The second one is to plan the type of change so that it is not too great and not too small. Next, the third is make sure that enough people see that the kind of change is possible. The fourth one is use a wide range of change strategies. And the last one is to be prepared for the change to take a long time.
Now we're moving into the next section is moving forward in ESP. In this chapter, we will describe the future of ESP from 4 different perspectives: context, curriculum design, classroom practice, and research in ESP. Discussion of these continuous issues of how learners should be best position themselves within the discourse communities and the role in that ESP should have in empowering learners to close the gap between the current skills or knowledge and the skill knowledge that the disciplines community want and accept. Now, the future of globalization and ESP, there are several points that the future of globalization and ESP had. The first one is globalization has enabled people to travel and meet people more easily, led to the rapid development of new technologies, and provided people with countries with new opportunities. Next is the policies adopted by some of the world's biggest economies, such as China and the European Union, the USA, India, Japan, and Germany, will have a continued and perhaps an even greater impact on the future needs of people to work in and with English-speaking communities. The importance of English in academia across the world has led to a rapid growth in the importance of English for academic purposes, or EAP, and the need for language instructors who can understand and implement ESP programs in universities. Next is the negative issues associated with the globalization of English can be mitigated through careful planning, implementation, and monitoring of newly introduced English language policies. Last, companies continue to target intentional markets in the drive for greater profitability, and universities continue to target international students to stabilize and or grow the students' bodies. These trends mean that there are likely to be more opportunities for people who are knowledgeable about ESP and can develop effective learning language programs and courses that address the needs of a diverse group of learners in industry and academia. These points highlight the complex and multifaceted nature of globalization and its impact on the importance of English and ESP. They also emphasize the need for careful planning and implementation of language policies to mitigate the negative effects of globalizations. Finally, they highlight the importance of ESP in addressing the needs of learners in academic or occupational settings and the opportunities that exist for those who are knowledgeable about ESP. Now, onto the next perspective is the future of ESP in curriculum design. The trend of the curriculum design in ESP is moving toward bigger is better. It's evident in almost every major industry in the world, including education. The growth of satellite campuses of high-ranked universities in countries with rapidly growing economics and the rapid rise in the creation of massive open online courses, or MOOCs, are examples of this trend in education. If the trend towards bigger is better continues to grow in academia, this is likely to have a profound effect on ESP curriculum design. Institutions will have a greater imperative to create ESP courses and programs that address the needs of their international learners. And these courses and programs will require some sort of centralized coordination. In this scenario, ESP practitioners will no longer be able to design their own courses. Instead, teams of ESP courses experts and subject specialists can be contracted to work together to create an effective courses and programs that address a wide range of learners, not only in different disciplines, but also with different native language and cultural backgrounds. The wide-angle approach to ESP is perhaps the most manageable at the program level, but narrow-angle ESP courses can only be usefully developed for large but widely dispersed groups of learners through an online delivery system. A bigger is better growth in academia will almost certainly lead to the increasing importance of English medium instructions or EMI, and large, prestigious, high-rank international education institutions can offer English-mediated specialist subjects courses developed by some of the world's leading researchers. ESP instructors will play an important role in providing language support to learners in EMI courses. This point of highlights is the potential impact of the bigger is better trend in academia on ESP curriculum design, and the need for centralized coordination and collaboration between ESP courses experts and subject specialists. They also emphasize the importance of ESP instructors in providing language support to learners in EMI courses. Now for the last point of view is the future of ESP classroom materials and methods. Earlier, we discussed the future of ESP curriculum design and how the trends towards bigger is better in almost every major industry will impact ESP. We suggest that the institutions will have a greater imperative to create ESP courses and programs that address the needs of the international learners. We also suggest that the use of discipline-specific corpora will be an important material for ESP instructors. In addition, we also discussed the emergence of new technologies such as virtual reality that can assist learners in understanding their field and help them experience and interact in the world of their target discourse community. In conclusion, is that the future of ESP is bright, and there will be more opportunities for people who are knowledgeable about ESP and can develop effective language programs and courses that address the needs of a diverse group of learners in industry and academia. The future of ESP research will continue to focus on qualitative analysis of linguistic and rhetorical features of written text, with corpora remaining the primary source of data. Ethnographic and mixed methods approach will also contribute to understanding how texts are situated in the discourse community. There may also be a shift towards quantitative analysis of corpora and other language data, as well as the creation and application of hardware and software tools that facilitate communication within and between specialist disciplines. The potential impact of emerging technologies such as virtual reality and artificial intelligence on ESP research, teaching, and learning cannot be discounted. That's all from Group 7. Thank you for listening us. Have you...